So today we're going to be talking about classes and IDs. And we're going to be talking about which you use, how you know which to use, and when to use it. So before we get started, I just wanted to show these 4 websites. And as you can see, with Intel, Apple, Samsung, and Walmart, they all have a general theme. Like in Samsung, the text is all the same font. All these appears the same size. Looks like we've got the same font down here, and this is highlighting an event that is about to happen. Same here with Intel. They've got a general color scheme that matches. They've got these cool lines and these images that follow throughout. And again, same font size, same font family. Apple took a little bit of a minimalist approach, and same with Walmart. Not really a minimalist approach, but still the same style was followed. So it's absolutely crucial that when you're creating a website, you need to have a unified style throughout the page. And any inconsistencies, such as a different font, a color that doesn't match, or an image that doesn't match, or maybe some contrast issues, it can make it very distracting to readers. However, if web developers are forced to go through each element within a page to make everything as it is in the correct form, it would take a drastic amount of time. We're talking weeks of work just to develop a single index HTML page. Thankfully, though, as developers, we have tools that we can use to select large quantities of HTML elements and style full pages in a matter of minutes. So let's get started talking about these things. Of course, they're called IDs and classes. And let's first start out with IDs. As you can see, I have a very small HTML document. And at the red arrow, I have an H1 element with an ID selector titled main. And the reason we use IDs is shown right here at the white arrow. I have a CSS document open using hash main. I use hash because it's an ID. That's how you call an ID to another document, be it JavaScript or CSS. And I've changed the color to blue. So it looks like you can use an ID to style an HTML document. This is the same document, but I've switched the H1 element at the red arrow to say class instead of ID. And now let's head over to the style CSS page at the white arrow. I have no longer kept that hash in. I've replaced it for a period or a dot. That is how you select a class in a CSS or JavaScript document. And I've changed the color to red. So it looks like you can also use class to change an element inside of HTML or change the way that it appears. But what is the point of having a difference between class and ID if they both style the page? They're both equally useful, right? Well, let's dig in. First off, let's talk about a class. A class is a great classifier. This is for something that you will have multiples of, or you'll have multiple classes inside of one element. A paragraph, anchor, span, and button elements are great examples of this. Like if you were to have a button that you want it to be the same on the entire page, like let's go back to Intel here. If you wanted all of these buttons up here to have the same styling and same hover, same with Apple, if you wanted them to all look the same, you could use a class element for that. What is an ID? Well, an ID is a unique identifier, and it should only be used for something that appears one time on the HTML document, or is the only one that performs a certain function. Navs, headers, and footers are good examples of this. So here's an ID. This should only be used one time. It's a bad example because it's an H1, and you may have multiple H1s throughout all your pages. So it's just like school. You have one student ID, but you can take multiple classes, more than one class. So here we have a better example of a class. I've got 4 paragraph elements by that red arrow. And as you can see, these 4 documents, or these 4 elements, has BG space top, BG space middle, BG, and BG space bottom. So these all have 2 class selectors in it, with the exception of this one. But let's look at these 2, the BG middle and BG, second and third paragraphs. What would be the benefit of using 2 class selectors? Well, if you're styling a page and you wanted all different colored backgrounds, you could do something like this. Let's head over to the style sheet and I can explain. So remember we had a BG space middle and just a BG. Well, BG space middle first looks at the background class and sets a background to light blue. And then looks at the space, goes on to the next word, and sees that the next word is middle. So it will use the middle background color, and that's why it's pink. I could also just have it say middle, but that defeats the purpose of using multiple classes. Back here, remember we had the one element that just had BG in it for the class? Well, here it is again. The .bg background color light blue. So that makes sense that there's a purple and a blue background. Remember, because when you're using a class, if you just have one selector, it will only follow that one. But if you have 2, it will follow the last one used. So I could have as many words as I want in here. As long as it ends in middle, it will give it the middle styling. Okay, now let's move on to IDs. Now, many of you have probably visited the website Wikipedia. Something that's fascinating about the Wikipedia website is it has many links that look like this. It's text that's colored blue and is underlined. And usually when you click on it, it will take you to a different page or a different section of the current page you're on. But how can you do that? Well, it is a brilliant use of the ID selector since it's unique. So here we have at the first red arrow an anchor element with an href. The href is hash last. Remember, because when you're calling an ID, you need to use a hash symbol. And then the second red arrow has a paragraph element that has the ID of last in it. So what should happen when we click on the blue link is it will check this anchor element, look at the href, and take us to the ID of last. And that's exactly what happened. It does look like it took us to the third paragraph. However, that is just because there wasn't enough HTML to fill the whole page. But if there was, it would take us to this paragraph. Now, you might be wondering, why would I have an ID in a class and how I style it? So right now I have it styled using BG bottom, which, if you can remember, had the light gray color. So that's why it's light gray. But I also have an ID which can be used to style it. Now this is typically not the way you can style an element, but I will use it to highlight a key detail. Like we said, in classes, the last word is the most important, unless you have an ID. This ID is called last, and if you're styling using an ID, that will always be what's used as the styler. So it doesn't matter whatever you have in the bottom, even if the class says bottom, it will always follow what the ID is. So this ID, for example, is orange. So now the background color is orange. So let's just do a quick review. Class selects a group of elements. You can select as many things as you want with this. It's not really unique. It's just a way to tie things together and style it all at one time. And an ID selects a single element or a single thing, just like how I showed right here, this last paragraph where you'd click on it and it would take you right there. That's the only one that will do that. And how you call it, just like we'd reviewed, class is called like this, dot class name, and then ID is called hash class name. Classes can be used to mark multiple elements on a page, whereas IDs should be limited to marking single elements on a page. Like you won't have the same ID for 10 paragraph elements, but you might have one ID for one paragraph element, just like I showed before, where it links us to the end of the page. That is okay, but you shouldn't use ID last on all of these paragraph elements. Otherwise, the computer will get confused and this link won't really work. And that is everything for classes and IDs. Thank you for watching.